Hey everyone, welcome to 2 Minutes to Review. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
This is our album review show. Longest album review in under 2 minutes wins. We know the episode is not going to be 2 minutes. You don't have to comment.
We just keep saying we are going to try. We never said we're going to be successful. I'm proof.
Yes. However, this time, it is not exactly 2 minutes to review because you're getting a double dose of Weezer in this episode. 2021, it's been loaded with some big albums, and Weezer have actually given us 2 albums this year.
Right.
They came out with OK Human earlier this year, and they're giving us Van Weezer.
And it's funny because all of 2020, we were waiting for a new Weezer album. They had announced actually back in 2019 when they announced the Hella Mega Tour that they were going to release Van Weezer, an album that they've been teasing for a while actually, because they wanted to do a stadium rock tour to match the stadium tour that they were about to go on. Then COVID happened and they kept delaying the album and they kept releasing singles but kept pushing the album release date. And then suddenly toward the end of last year, beginning of this year, they were like, you know what? You know that orchestral pop album we've been teasing now for a few years too, that we've been kind of working and tinkering on? Well, we're going to release it now too. So here we are with 2 Weezer albums, 2 very different albums from the band. As I mentioned, OK Human, the more orchestral pop album, and then Van Weezer, which in case the Van didn't give you that little clue, it's more of a hard rock, stadium rock kind of inspired album.
Let's just call it what it is. It's an 80s album.
It's an 80s. Yeah, it's an 80s rock album. You know, without getting too much into my review early, this is them trying to sound like every rock band that dominated rock radio in the 80s. Early 80s, I should even say. But here we are, 2 new Weezer albums. What do we think? Well, we're going to start off with OK Human, but before we do, we want to give a very special shout out to Lucky 13 Beard Co.
Yeah, they've been our sponsor for a while now, and we really want to thank them a lot. You know, they put out a great product too. Beard oils and balms made in small batches, and they're always coming out with new scents. If you've ever wanted to try a product like this, and maybe, you know, you felt weird walking into a store and picking it up, because, well, you know, I'm a man. I got a beard. You know, I don't need grooming products. You know, I'm a man. But they really work. They really do smooth out your beard, make you feel really good. And they leave you smelling pretty good, too. One of my favorites is the tobacco vanilla. They're always releasing new ones. They're actually on the cusp of releasing 2 brand new scents that I can't tell you what they are, but I know that they're going to be coming out soon. They just released one more of like a citrus type thing based on the owner Ed's honeymoon. So it's really like tropical smelling. But you know what? Check it out for yourself. Go to etsy.com/shop/Lucky13, the number Beard Co. And whatever you find on their website, you put in the code EFP10 at checkout. You get 10% off your entire order. If you ever, like I said, you ever want to try it, this is the time to try it. Use it at checkout, the code EFP10. Get 10% off of your order today.
And you know what? A little tip for you. Follow Lucky 13 Beard Co. on Instagram because they've been teasing some of the new flavors coming out too, and it's got me really, really excited. One of them might be Fruit Loops. I'm just from what I'm gathering on Instagram. So again, etsy.com/shop/Lucky13BeardCo. Use that code EFP10, get 10% off. You can't beat that. It's just a great deal. You just can't beat that. My good sir.
Yes, Mr. Zach.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. I will do my review first. I'll give you what I think of OK Human.
Well then, let me know when you're ready.
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, go.
The best way that I can really describe OK Human is if you took a Weezer album and you walked it through the garden of Abbey Road. That's really what this is. If you haven't heard this album by now, and chances are you probably haven't because you're listening to this review, it really is Weezer kind of all grown up, and they're doing very, very, very Abbey Road-esque type songs. I mean, Here Comes the Rain. It actually uses like Here Comes the Sun's melodies and hooks in it. So it's kind of like a direct homage to it. There's a lot of really well done string playing here. And don't let this album fool you just because it's Weezer and it sounds kind of like, you know, the Beatles, dare I say, even though the album title is reminiscent of Radiohead. Instead of OK Computer, we've got OK Human. I mean, songs like Playing My Piano really kind of take you into Maxwell Silverhammer. I mean, it's just so weird how Weezer took this album and, they said it's like a pop orchestral Baroque style type album, and they really kind of nailed it. Now, I will say this, because we have criticized other bands before for sounding like other bands. I have to criticize them for sounding like the Beatles. I mean, a lot of people say that, this is kind of like a Pet Sounds type album for them. I would say that this is a landmark for Weezer. I wouldn't say that they needed to 100% go into the Beatles, and nor is this a Pet Sound album for them, but I think that this is a really special album from Weezer, especially with how little they actually use guitars on this. They do acoustic guitars, but it's mostly, just a lot of just orchestra, and it's a lot of big sounds and a very mature big sound. I would say, dare I even say that it sounds more mature than the Beatles when they did Abbey Road, but still a solid album from Weezer on OK Human.
All right, time's locked in. Out of 5 stars, what would you give OK Human?
3.5.
Okay.
It definitely is, like I kept saying, it's a grown-up album from Weezer. I have to criticize them for sounding like the Beatles. There's just no way around it. If you don't hear the Beatles on this, and that is the one band, when I was, just looking around, seeing what other people kind of thought about the album so I could kind of get my head in the right mind space. That is the one band that I didn't actually hear people mention, which was kind of weird.
I think just because, no, I'm not gonna comment right now because I'm afraid I'm going to start going into my review.
But what another thing that's actually kind of funny about this is that they actually recorded the strings at the Abbey Road studio. So a very Beatles sounding album.
They've been working on this album for a while, actually. And different parts. I mean, I think they even stopped work on it to go back to doing Van Weezer when they realized they were going to go on a stadium tour with Green Day and Fall Out Boy.
And what's weird about it is that none of it sounds like it's disjointed at all, which is what I really like about it. It sounds like it was done, all in one session, all at one time. Everything sounds very well composed. The songs flow into each other. You just sound way too much like the Beatles on here for me. So there you go. Any GVF fans who are listening to this, I don't just rag on them for sounding like Zeppelin. I rag on Weezer for sounding like the Beatles too.
Random Van Fleet fans aren't listening to us anymore. All right. Now it's my turn.
All right, Mr. Zach, are you ready?
I will say it so. See
3.
what I did there?
I see what you did.
Proud of myself.
3, 2, 1. Get your umbrella. Here comes the rain.
So I definitely think that this title is so fitting because it really is, for a band that has always sounded, for at least earlier times, early time Weezer, has always sounded personal, human sounding. This might be the most personal Weezer has sounded in a long, long time. And dare I say, the song Dead Roses might even be the best version of Weezer stripped down. I was really surprised by that song. And the thing that I actually really appreciated most was that they didn't use the 38-piece orchestra as a prop. The orchestras, the strings, actually served a purpose on each song. Songs like Alu Gabi and Screams, they never sounded forced. It actually really did enhance the song, and without those orchestra elements, you wouldn't have the same impact that the songs have. I also have to say that Playing My Piano might be the closest we ever get to hearing Rivers Cuomo doing a Disney musical. And in a weird way, hearing that song actually really made me wish that Disney would give Rivers a call. While Matt heard more of the Beatles, I definitely feel like Weezer comes very close to capturing the vibe of albums like Pet Sounds. But at the same time, there's definitely moments where I couldn't help but think, you know what? I feel like what Weezer is trying to do here, bands like The Format did better with their underrated gem, Dog Problems. So the one thing I'll flaw them is that the whole orchestral pop element, adding it to your albums, it's not really that unique, but it's still very well done. And if you're a Weezer fan, you will definitely, definitely, definitely appreciate this more stripped down version of them.
All right, we got a time and the star rating out of 5 stars.
Out of 5 stars, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It was just an enjoyable listen. I definitely see myself not necessarily returning to it nonstop, but if I need something kind of more on the softer side, pleasant to play in the background while I'm doing something else, I could see me going to this being like, let me just play this right now. It was, and to your point too, at no point did I feel like it was all over the place. It might be one of the more well thought out albums from Weezer too, because then maybe I'll start dipping into to the review of the next album. It definitely didn't feel like Weezer just kind of, did this in a rush just for the sake of doing it, which is funny because the way it kind of came out of nowhere, it felt like it was kind of, unless if you knew the history of the album, it just was a surprise album. And it might also be the first album that I really feel like lyrically was inspired by the pandemic, especially on a song like Playing My Piano, where he's talking about life getting him down with all the Zoom calls and Zoom interviews. Like, we're so attached to our computers right now and to screens that we kind of need to go back to being humans again. I don't necessarily know if that was just a coincidence of timing, but it felt really relevant. And again, there's been plenty of new music created during the pandemic. It feels like this might be one of the first albums to really resonate during these times, which is what made it coming out first. Because again, they kind of kept going back and forth as to which album would come out first. That's kind of why this album was perfect to come out the timing it did.
And I'll say this too. It's one of the first Weezer albums that I've actually enjoyed in a while. We reviewed the Covers album. That was kind of like, really? Like, But going back through like their Black album and what was the one with the astronaut? Yeah, that one.
I'm actually going to share I'm going to dip into those two, that album as well as the Black album a little bit in my next review. But yeah, it was refreshing to hear a more organic sounding Weezer after.
Not only that, it just feels like a different album, like completely different album from them. Yeah. Normally, you kind of understand and know what you're going to get from Weezer, like a song kind of that was done in like a major key, like when they covered Africa from Toto. They take it down and they do it like in a minor kind of like dull type tone, because that's Weezer's kind of MO. This one, actually, all of that really worked for them here because it was such an, like we kept saying, an organic feeling album. It's just so warm and inviting.
And it still sounded like Weezer too. That's the other astonishing thing.
It really did.
As different as it is for them, at no point did I go, who is this band? Which, granted, Rivers is such a unique voice that's easy to stand out. But even with Pacific Daydream, I'm like, am I listening to Weezer or am I listening to Rivers' solo pop album? Like, this sounded like Weezer.
Yeah.
In a weird way. But you know what? Because we got a lot of music to talk about, buddy.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to cover here.
But before we go into Van Weezer, let's find out who gave the longest review in under 2 minutes for OK Human. And I'm actually, by the way, I'm glad you mentioned OK Computer by Radiohead, because I'm very proud of myself for not mixing those two titles up. If I have, I'm acknowledging it now. Sorry, I'm dyslexic.
It's completely the other side of it. It's, if OK Computer, I can picture like a computer, like a board inside of a computer. I picture, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would picture like dirt for this album. They're just the two different sides of the world.
Which is why they named it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
and the album cover's really cool too. As I digress,
there's a lot of detail in the cover. Anyway, Matt, your time. I'm not gonna ask you if you're ready. You're not. I know you're not gonna be ready for this. Your time for the OK Human review. You're really making these commenters happy because your review came in at 2 minutes and 13 seconds. You went over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got me on this one because your time, Zach, comes in at 1 minute 53 seconds.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. It's 1 out of like 50.
We didn't do that. Actually, yeah, we might have done that.
Yeah, we probably have. We've done a lot of reviews. If you've missed any of them, go check it out. YouTube.com/Epic Footnote.
Nice little plug there. Well, now that we have discussed OK Human, now it's time to discuss the even more new album, the brand new album, Van Weezer. For this one, I was a gentleman, but now I'm being greedy. I want to go first for this one.
You want to go first for this
I
one.
want to go first for this one.
All right. Well, I guess it's time to play the game. So here we go. Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Do it.
Okay, so it's very clear that Weezer wants to sound like Van Halen and Cheap Trick, or really any band, as I mentioned earlier, that dominated rock radio in the 80s. But here's the ironic thing. This album might actually be the most Weezer-sounding album that they've released in years. Maybe not necessarily Weezer Blue Album or Pinkerton, but songs like All the Good Ones, Sheila Can Do It, Precious Metal Girl, and Beginning of the End, surprisingly, I feel like they could easily fit in on the Green Album or Make Believe. Now, whether or not that's actually a good thing, depending on where you think Weezer was at their peak, but the songs really are, it's undeniably Weezer in a weird way. And I kind of mentioned it before, I appreciate that this album finds a good balance between the pristine production that maybe made Pacific Dream and the Black Album sound weak and just blah, and the rawer material that Weezer is really kind of beloved for. And I think a song like Hero really captures that perfectly. But here's the problem. Then suddenly a song called Blue Dream comes up. And it is literally just Crazy Train with new lyrics and vocals. It's literally a ripoff of Crazy Train. And I'm sure they're going to chalk it up as a tribute to Ozzy and Randy, but really it just infuriated me of how lazy it came off. And it started getting me down a negative rabbit hole of whether or not this album is actually a well thought out tribute to the hard rock bands that they grew up with, or just a really lazy attempt to incorporate the hard rock tropes just so they could have an album to sell on tour. And I mean, I love the song I Need Some of That, but then I'm like, wait, is this just a ripoff of Heat of the Moment and Take Me Home Tonight? And then furthermore, while OK Human's orchestral elements really serve a purpose on the songs, I couldn't help but think, is all the shredding really elevating the songs? Or are they just kind of, if you took them away, would you even notice that they were gone? With all those negative thoughts aside, it's still a fun record. And if you really enjoy Weezer incorporating, when Weezer does an actual pop record that has a pop rock record with guitar solos and everything, you're definitely going to enjoy this. And it might actually be one of their better albums in a long, long time.
And we got a time, and your star rating out of 5.
3.
3.
And I'm not going to lie, Blue Dream could make me even change my decision even further. Like, if it wasn't for that song, I might even consider giving this album a 3.5. Because it's actually, so it contains some of their better written songs in a long time, or at least more memorable hooks and everything. Like Hero is actually a really fun, good pop rock song. But I just can't forgive them for literally doing a Crazy Train cover with new vocal. I mean, it's just lazy, and it made me just second guess everything. And let me put it like this. I prefer OK Human over Van Weezer, but if OK Human wasn't in the picture, Van Weezer might have taken the claim of this is the best Weezer album in nearly 10 years. But I'm still sticking with 3. Also, fun story, and I'll let you then go, to attest to how even though they incorporate solos and it's trying to sound like Van Halen and Cheap Trick, I was playing it on my speakers, this album, and suddenly my wife, Jen, goes, Zach, is that new Weezer? So even with all the guitar solos and everything, she still recognized it as, without a question, Weezer. And I think that's also a testament to how, and I think another reason why actually longtime fans of Weezer would enjoy this album is because they've never been shy about Cheap Trick, Van Halen, Kiss's influences on them. And you can even hear a little bit of those influences in the earlier stuff, with a little bit more of the Cars influence inserted into it. So I actually think this will please a lot of fans who might have written them off years ago. But damn it, Blue Dream, you just had to ruin everything. But I digress. Mr. Gamba.
You done now? You know,
I'm
let the
done now.
real review go.
Sorry. Apologies. I did two 2 minute reviews on Van Weezer.
Yeah, you did.
I have a lot of opinions on this album. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1. Pork and beans.
So this album, as Zach has already stated, it is a big old tribute to the 80s. I'm really curious to see if when this album comes out, if Wolfgang Van Halen actually comes out and says anything about Van Weezer as a title to this album. He's been kind of everywhere lately with Van Halen stuff, and I'm just kind of curious to see if that comes out. But actually getting into the album, it starts off really strong with End of the Game, one of the songs that we've had for a while now, at least since 2019. And I think that this album really would have been a lot stronger if they pulled back a lot on what they were trying to do, because in listening to this album, like Zach has been saying, Blue Dream, I literally stopped in my tracks while I was listening to this and thought, did they just throw Crazy Train on here? Like literal Crazy Train. Like there's no hiding it. Like in the song Beginning of the End, there's just a very Queen inspired solo in the middle of the song, but it doesn't feel like it's different from the song. Blue Dream just sounds like Crazy Train with Rivers on it, and it's kind of weird. But that's also another part of this album that I really kind of wished that they did better. Like they did on OK Human. They sounded like the Beatles, and it sounded composed, and it sounded good. On here, when you get to songs like One More Hit, it sounds very much so like a Motley Crue, Judas Priest type riffing in it. But then when Rivers comes and starts to sing, it's like we're going to pull away from this very deep and heavy sound into typical Weezer. And that feels just very disjointed for me. But when you do get some really good songs like I Need Some of That, that really takes you back to like a simpler time in the 80s, and they've got like 80s synth going on in the song. It feels really good. It actually feels kind of like, and I know it's not 80s, it feels like a Bare Naked Ladies song, and I really kind of dig how they do that. So in the end, no pun intended, I really think that Weezer would have been a lot stronger on this album if they did Weezer things instead of introducing so many of their influences in here, sometimes to a major flaw.
Time's locked in. Star ranking out of 5 stars.
3. This album, End of the Game, for me, was kind of really mind-blowing when it came out in 2019. It's like, wow, look at Weezer go. Look at this sound. It sounds like a Weezer song. But I know it's also sounding like Van Halen. I also know that, you know, you guys are talented. You can write your own songs. You've done so for many years. The fuck you have to sound like Ozzy for? Why? I know what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to pay a love letter to everything that influenced you throughout your career. But why? Where OK Human sounds, and I said this before, it sounds very composed and together, and it sounded like everything is in one session, and it's very smooth. This, it's, you know what? It's the difference between drinking a nice bourbon and then drinking Natty Ice. This is just like a real shock to the palate. It's like, I just heard something really nice, and now I'm in this. It sounds like they started and stopped and, hey, you know what? Let's just do an Ozzy cover. We'll
it sounded rushed.
Different. And I don't understand how it can sound rushed if they took their time on it. The only thing that I can think of is that they took their time in doing all the mastering to get the album to sound good, because from that perspective, it sounds really good. But because it's a counterpart to OK Human, because they can't do OK Human live necessarily, this is definitely the stadium stuff, and they wanted to get the stadium stuff ready for a tour. So from that perspective, if the recording maybe and the writing was rushed and the mastering took a long time, because it's what is it? It's May now of 2021. I remember hearing this probably late summer of 2019.
Yeah.
So it's been quite some time.
The truth, when you listen to this album, you kind of realize the reason why, because the truth is, and this is kind of going down a rabbit hole of talking about my frustrations with certain bands in the music industry. If you really wanted, now I get it. It stinks that you can't tour with COVID going on right now. It stinks because, a lot of bands really record music to sell copies or to promote tours or to sell copies at the tours. And a lot of bands are trying to make the argument that it makes no sense financially to go on to not be able to tour behind an album. Now, I invite any of my friends who are still in the music industry or anyone in the music industry to try to explain this to me. How does that make sense? You're telling me that you're seriously not making money in today's streaming world. It's not like you're really selling that much physical copies at these tours anyway. And to me, it makes perfect sense to do something like Deftones did, where you release an album in the pandemic because you recognize, or even what Trivium continued to do, it's like, listen, times stink. You need something to listen to and enjoy while you're at home. Here you go.
But that's okay human, though.
Well, but my point being, because I think they could have done that with Van Weezer, because they've had, obviously the album was ready to go. I personally feel like they realized, you know what, it's still going to be a while. Let's just do OK Human now then. Like OK Human is what they really, like, released wise is what they probably should have done with Van Weezer. But then when you listen to Van Weezer, you realize, yeah, this album's literally just to promote the Hella Mega Tour.
But you know what, though? What's funny about that, too, is, sorry to cut you off, but
no, it's fine.
The Hella Mega Tour was supposed to happen, and they only had Van Weezer released. Or not Van Weezer, End of the Game. Because we were supposed to go that August, and they just released that song.
Well, no. They released End of the Game in September of 2019 as part of the tour announcement. Actually, and by the way, not to call anyone out from Crush Management, but the Hella Mega Tour, even though it's sponsored by Harley Davidson, it's really Crush Management's tour because it's Green Day, Fall Out Boy, Weezer, all of Crush Management's bands. And the way that, and it was actually brilliantly promoted in that each band released a new song the same day of the tour being announced, and they all performed on Jimmy Kimmel throughout the week. And so they premiered End of the Game in September 2019, and then Heroes came out pretty much in April maybe, and they kind of angled it as more of a tribute, April or May, and they angled it as a tribute to frontline workers. So they've had this album done for a while, and they continue to kind of release some songs throughout the year. They just decided, you know what, no, we're gonna wait until the tour. I mean, they made it just so clear that this album was to promote a tour. Just like how you can make the argument that Father of All by Green Day was kind of similar. And if you listen to our past review of that album, you'll hear why we are so critical of that album. What's sad is that even though we're kind of like dragging Van Weezer through the mud, it's still a better sounding album than a lot of the last three albums before OK Human came out.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
like,
yeah.
It's still better songwriting than anything off of Pacific Daydream. Black Album was okay, but it still didn't feel like the whole band was there. At least with this album,
still would take this over that.
Oh yeah, I would still take. Which I don't know what that says about Weezer, the current state of Weezer or not. If you had told me, oh, this was actually recorded during the Green Album sessions, like, yeah, I can see that actually. I hate to keep harping on Blue Dream, but that really bursted my bubble. If that song didn't come up, I might have been in a little bit of denial about what this album is.
There's a way to do it right and there's a way to do it wrong. Blue Dream, it sounds like they needed one more song in there. Like, who haven't we put on here yet? Oh, we haven't put Ozzy on here. Hey, you know how to play Crazy Train? Yeah, let's play Crazy Train.
Yeah.
But
they probably said to themselves, like, did we do Crazy Train for the Teal album? Oh, that was Paranoid? Okay, cool. So we'll just do it for Van Weezer.
Like a song like Beginning of the End, really, for me, is kind of that perfect blend of what they're trying to accomplish here. And when when the Queen solo came in, and it felt very Brian May, even to the point where I'm like, is Brian May actually on this? Because I know he did a couple of solos on somebody's album back in 2019, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but
he's appeared on a bunch of albums. Yeah.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, that song is how you do this correctly. That in End of the Game, that's how you really do what they were trying to do correctly. Blue Dream, definitely not how you do this correctly. One More Hit, definitely not how you do this correctly. Yeah. But I mean, there's great moments on this album, but when Weezer fails, they fail.
Yeah, and it's just hard to look past it. I think I know the answer from you, but out of the two albums that we reviewed today, I personally liked OK Human better.
It depends on the mood that I'm in, and that's going to be my honest answer, because I can see myself liking and listening to some tracks off of this and being, really, really okay with what I'm listening to. But then, kind of like I've said in the past, OK Human is an album listener's dream. You put that on, some hi-fi headphones, a nice drink in your hand, and you just sit back and listen. That's what that type of album is.
I'm really curious as to which album, to quote my favorite SNL
Weezer
sketch.
albums.
Yeah. To quote my favorite SNL sketch of the past decade, I'm really curious what the Ride or Die Weezer fans will gravitate towards. Maybe one day we can get Matt Damon to talk to us about it. Until then, let's find out who gave the longest review in under 2 minutes. Matt, what was my time?
Your time comes in pretty much back to where you started from. 2 minutes, 36 seconds.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, you did better than me, Matt, but not by much because you came in at 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah.
I think Blue Dream just screwed up our whole night.
And I wonder why they call it Blue Dream. I'm really curious.
I wonder why that song even exists other than, crap, we need another song. But Ride or Die Weezer fans, what do you think? Do you agree with our thoughts on OK Human and Van Weezer? Do you disagree? Do you think we're in denial that we're still living in the Blue album era? Do you also prefer one album over the other? Let us know what you think on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more reviews like this, for other podcast episodes, and even video content. And thanks so much to Lucky 13 Beard Co. for their support.
Yeah, small batch beard bombs and oils made right here in New Jersey. Get 10% off your order today. Use the code EFP10 at checkout, etsy.com/shop/Lucky13, the number, Beard Co., and get all of your small batch made beard bombs and oils at 10% off today.
10% off? Say it ain't so.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Thanks so much for listening.
I got my hash pipe.